It's Chilnualna.
Hello and welcome back to another edition of the Journal, part 2 of our adventure into Yosemite National Park and our exploration of Wawona. Now, when you think of iconic Yosemite National Park, what naturally comes to mind? The stunning view as you emerge out of the Wawona Tunnel and get that first glimpse of Yosemite Valley and that sheer granite wall of El Capitan? Maybe it's that stunning view of magnificent Yosemite Falls plunging 2,400 feet crashing to the valley below from the swinging bridge over the Merced River? Or it might just be that familiar crescent-shaped rock sticking up into the skyline at the end of the valley. I'm sure you've seen that one before in the back of the California State Quarter, Half Dome. Or maybe, just maybe, it's Chilnualna Falls. Okay, I have to admit it, there's a lot of great stuff to see here in Yosemite National Park, and there's lots of waterfalls to choose from. In fact, that's one of the reasons it's so popular. Of all the waterfalls in the world, Yosemite Falls ranks right up there with the best of them, from Angel Falls in Canaima National Park in Venezuela to Tagelo Falls in Natal National Park in South Africa. And my favorite to say, Utegårdfoss Falls in Norway. That one's not fed by a river, but by a glacier. But Yosemite Falls isn't the only spectacular waterfall in Yosemite. There's others. Some are more crowded than others, and some are a lot easier to get to. Over the years, I've been to most of them traipsing around Yosemite. You can almost drive right up to Bridalveil Falls, and Yosemite Falls' lower area is just a short hike from the valley floor. I've also hiked the mist trail up the steep steps to Vernal Falls and Nevada Fall on my way to Half Dome. And I've seen California Falls, Waterwheel Falls, and Tuolumne Falls while backpacking along the length of the Tuolumne River. So when I was looking at things to do while camping in Wawona, I saw this waterfall trail on the map, Chilnualna Falls. Never heard of it. While doing some research, I found out that Chilnualna Falls wasn't some measly drip way back in the backcountry, but a whopping 690 feet of combined falls from a series of 5 cascades sliding through and over large granite formations above the Wawona Basin. No shit. The trail to get to it wasn't exactly a walk in the national park either, to get my drift. It was over 8 miles long with approximately 2,400 feet of elevation gain. That's a hell of a good day hike, and out of reach for a lot of the park visitors. Well, we gotta go do this one, I told Jerry. It's not in the valley floor and not as famous as some of the others, so it shouldn't be nearly as crowded. And best of all, it was mid-May, right when the water flow peaks at the fullest. Ought to be just about perfect for us. And one last reason to go check out this waterfall, the trailhead was only a few minutes from our camp. How perfect is that? I never really sleep good while camping, especially the night before a big hike. I just get too excited, I guess. So when I decided to swing my legs out of my hammock to go take a leak, I couldn't believe how many stars were out tonight. I wandered around trying to be as quiet as possible so not to wake Dave and Jerry, and I took a few photos before the sun began to rise in Yosemite National Park. It was a lot colder than we expected. The overnight low was supposed to be down to the mid-40s, but according to my thermometer, it was hovering just above freezing. Jeez, time for some warm coffee. While I was using an old camp coffee percolator on my Coleman stove that I picked up at Goodwill, this strange little orange bird flew down to check things out. He had an orange breast, black head and wings, and a yellow beak. I thought it was maybe an Oriole, like the Baltimore Orioles. But as it turns out, it was most likely an American robin. Who knew? He hopped around really friendly-like and just about hopped right on top of my boot. They must be used to campers tossing him breadcrumbs or something, because he just hopped around making himself really noticeable. I started to feel a little guilty, so I found a few broken crumbs from my leftover Pringles can that was sitting on the table, and I tossed them to him. He really liked that. When Dave and Jerry got up, we made breakfast and fueled us up for our tough hike up to Chilnualna Falls. We secured our food and scented items in the bear locker and hit the road. We turned onto Chilnualna Falls Road and drove past some rustic cabins and some downright beautiful Airbnbs to a dirt road and our parking area for the trail. When everything was locked up, we started up the road toward the Chilnualna Falls Trail, already out of breath. At the trailhead sign, our path veered right along a dirt trail, while the paved road made a sharp left, heading steeply into the forest uphill. This was the pack route, meant for horses. Well, good morning. Today is the day we were looking forward to. We're at the Chilnualna Falls Trail. It's an 8.2 mile round trip hike with about 2,400 feet of gain. It's one of the better waterfalls in Yosemite that most people don't go to. So we're going to go check this out. We parked at the trailhead, and I had a good night's sleep last night, and then we're going to hit up the trail.
It's Chilnualna Falls.
Chilnualna. Okay, we got to try to remember that. I can never remember it. All right, we're going to be heading up this way. We got quite a bit of gain today. We got 2,400 feet. We're going to be heading that way, and over in the far distance over there, on the just above the cabin, is
We're going that way.
is some snow. All right, well, we've hiked 100 yards. We're already out of breath. This is the sign. Looks like it's a mountain lion area. Maybe we'll see a mountain lion today. What do you think?
Yeah. That's a quick 4 miles. Yeah.
You can hear the water rushing down the canyon already.
Good, I heard him when I came out.
We headed up the steep trail and quickly heard the roar of the lower Chilnualna Falls through the trees. We reached a sharp left turn in the trail and saw a worn footpath leading down away from the trail down a narrow staircase, hugging a cliffside on the left bank of the creek. We took this path and enjoyed the close-up views of the Cascades as they rifled through the worn boulders downstream. Yeah.
Very beginning.
All right, well, we've only hiked not even a quarter mile, and we've already got a pretty good view of some falls. A little cascade coming down. You can hear the water rippling right next to us. And we're heading this way, up that way. The spray off the lower falls glistened in the sunlight, and the mist sprayed me with a crisp, cool water that felt good. I tried to take some artistic shots of the waterfalls, but looking directly into the sun, it made it difficult. So we've just gone a few steps up the trail, and we got this magnificent view of one of the lower falls, and I don't know if you can see it on the video because of the sun glare, but it's cascading from way on the top, and it's working its way all the way down to this pool down here. Pretty impressive for such a short hike. It's steep, but it's short. Heading back up the trail, we passed a rusted metal sign with trail mileages to several different destinations I'd never heard of before, like Chiquita Pass and Fernandez Pass, besides the falls. There were some other more familiar locations on this sign, like the 21.3 miles to Glacier Point and 25 miles to Yosemite Valley. But my favorite was the sign that led us to Beer Camp. Well, not actually, it said Deer Camp. My bad. There was also a second sign reminding us that we were now entering the Yosemite wilderness. Here were more reminders to follow the leave no trace principles about washing dishes and building fires, and the proper use of a bear canister and others that Dave and Jerry and I were already familiar with. Here the trail was mostly uphill and now out of the shade and into the intense sun. What shade we did pass under was filled with wildflowers of purple and yellow alongside the trail. Trail crews had been busy in this section as there were many large downed trees that had been sawn through to clear the trail, and some magnificent stone steps carved by hand that helped us up the steep sections.
Seems like there's only one solution to this problem. It's for us to get up on that ridge.
We're going to end up probably way up there on top, I bet you. Well, we've been hiking down the Chilnualna Falls trail for about a half hour, I guess. Come to a couple of really good scenic viewpoints of the lower area of the falls, and it's a pretty steep trail, 2,400 feet incline and 4 miles. So some sections were steep, but most of it's pretty well graded. And
Taking our time. It's heating up already. We're stopping in the shade whenever we can. But we're getting there.
We also noticed another worn path through the trees, so we went off trail to explore where it went. To our surprise, it was another terrific view of Chilnualna Creek working its way over the boulders into a refreshing pool.
We took a little side trail, 50 feet or so down to this pool. I could see it through the trees. Got a nice little fall. And it continues on this way. There's another fall right there. And the view all the way downstream.
More scenic sections of tall sequoias and breathtaking views across the Wawona Valley down toward the face of Wawona Dome at 6,897 feet were just off the trail to our right, as were more down sections of trees that were cut through for passage.
This is our view from this rock outcrop on the trail to Chilnualna Falls. Well, here's our first good shot at Chilnualna Falls. We're going to be working our way to the left somewhere up above that, and we'll come up above those, hopefully get a great view. It's a tiring hike. We're about probably almost 3 miles in out of the 4 to get to the top, and it's been steep the whole way. There's been hardly any let off. We're tired.
By now it was getting later in the morning and I could feel the heat. Jerry and I stopped in brief shade to wipe the sweat from our brows, and I borrowed a bandana from Jerry as the sweat was dripping down my face.
Well, we're working our way up to the falls. We're sweating pretty good, at least I am. Looks like Jerry is too. We're not too far from the falls. We can see the cascade off to the right, but we still got some elevation to go. Some little bit of rock hopping here. They provided stairs, which is nice, but it's getting pretty hot. Seeing that water up close is going to feel good.
Back on the steep trail up, we came upon an epic staircase, magnificently carved into the granite. Tremendous views off to our right, and a stiff breeze threatened to blow my head all the way down to Wawona Valley. All we could see at the top was the bright blue sky. We could hear the rushing of Chilnualna Creek and the thundering splash of it falling off a granite ledge hundreds of feet below.
Well, we're getting closer to the falls, and hopefully we can see them around the corner here. We can definitely hear them. They're down there. We got to keep going this way. Looks like we're going to work our way to the left and up and around. Hanging onto my hat here. Oh, check it out. Wow.
This was the middle and most impressive fall. We walked to the edge, or as close as we dared to get, as the rocks were wet and slippery near the edge. This spot was impressive, as you could walk to the dry ledge very close to the drop-off and lean over, but not see the final plunge of Chilnualna Falls.
Pretty impressive, huh, Dave?
Looking upstream was equally as beautiful, a cool, cascading creek flowing through slots carved by millions of years of runoff. Tall pine trees provided shade, and flat boulders made it an enticing spot for a lunch break. Several other hikers had stopped here as well, as this was a great lunch spot. But I wanted to continue up hiking toward the upper falls and the plunge pool at its base. Dave was satisfied having accomplished this tough hike, and was content taking a break near a large boulder, listening to the creek rushing by and the deafening sounds of the waterfalls around us. Jerry and I pushed on just a little further upstream. At the top of the trail, just past Dave's resting spot, was another rusted sign, Wawona 5.6 miles, and several other signs of destinations deeper into the wilderness. I wanted a closer view of the upper falls. Jerry and I topped out over a round granite knob and crossed over a narrow stream on a well-placed log and plowed through some scraggly brush to an access point to the main upper falls. I scrambled down close to the water's edge for a better view.
Well, behind me is Chilnualna Falls here in Yosemite National Park. Couldn't ask for a more beautiful day to be up here in the higher elevations of Yosemite. This waterfall is at its peak right now. It's mid-May, and it's got a lot of snow melt that's been running into the river here that's been flowing downstream and giving us a spectacular view. This is the upper falls. This is the more hard one to get to, the more difficult trail. It's about a 4.1 mile trail to get to this point, so it's an 8.2 mile day, but we're treated to some magnificent views at this stunning pool here at Chilnualna Falls here in Yosemite National Park.
After taking in a close-up view, we scrambled back over the rocks and back through the scraggly brush and made our way over to a large set of nice boulders in a shade from a lone tree, all within a few feet of the rushing creek and a tremendous view of not only the upper falls, but the steep drop off the ledge below. Here, Jerry and I sat and had our lunch. It was nice sitting here on the flat rocks in the shade, enjoying the cool breeze and terrific views.
Well, we worked our way up to Chilnualna Falls, and this is our spot for a break. I think a good half-hour break before we start working our way back down. Pretty warm. We're going to get caught up on our hydration. I have a Grail water bottle filter. I'm going to go down to the water's edge here and top this off for the hike out. It's a pretty amazing spot, isn't it?
While Jerry and I finished eating our lunch, I topped off my Grail water bottle filter and we hiked a short ways to find Dave. Together, we all walked over to a flat section of rock oddly pocked with cup-like depressions and a magnificent view of the creek as it began to tumble over the ledge. Here we took a group photo before hiking down to the edge of the middle fall. At the edge of the drop, the thundering power of Chilnualna Creek roared as it pounded the rocks below. We couldn't see the final impact spot due to the angle of the wet rocks, and no one dared lean out any further. Here the wind blew cool and refreshing, as spray from the fall moistened our sunburned skin. I had to keep one hand on my phone and the other on my hat up here. The trail back down seemed tedious as we had already seen this section before, and the sun seemed to be more intense now that we were hiking directly into the afternoon sun. Hiking down, we realized why we were so tired, as coming up there were only a few level sections of trail. I passed the time stopping to identify wildflowers and plants using my Seek app that didn't require an internet connection. This app required you to take a photo of the suspected plant, wait a few seconds, then the app would identify the name and type of plant in the photograph. Sometimes it required additional photographs to narrow it down, and while it didn't recognize all the plants I took photos of, it did identify some of them. When we arrived near the bottom of the trail, we decided to take the pack trail back to the car. Even though it was partially paved, it offered different scenery than before, and it was mostly in the shade. When we arrived back at the vehicles, it felt good to crack open a cold beverage that we had kept in an ice chest secured in a bear-resistant locker near the concrete restroom. We drove down the road slowly as many people were out walking around the edges of the narrow road. A lot of folks must have been staying in Airbnb cabins nearby and they had walked to the trail, or maybe they were just out exploring. Arriving back in camp, it was nice to see our camp established and our camp chairs sitting in the shade. It had been a tough day, and we enjoyed hanging out listening to the creek flowing behind our camp, the birds singing in the trees, and the sounds of campers laughing and chopping firewood in the distance. These are special times, and I appreciated every moment. Digging through the ice chest, I had somehow forgot I had brought bacon-wrapped cream cheese stuffed jalapenos. How in the world had I overlooked this astounded me. I laid my vintage Coleman griddle on the stove and began cooking. It was a little too early for dinner, but these spicy little green beauties would make a great appetizer. Now, I don't think Jerry was a fan of bacon-wrapped jalapenos, but after smelling the bacon cooking and hearing it sizzle on the griddle, he decided to give it a try. I think he liked it. For dinner tonight, we relied on a camp usual, brats cooked on the open campfire. Only this time, it was just too early to light the campfire, so I grilled them on my griddle since it was already hot from the jalapenos. Not only had I brought the usual brats, but some jalapeno cheese-filled ones as well. I must have really been craving the jalapenos before this trip. I had brought 2 shelter systems on this trip, my Hennessy Expedition ASIM hammock that I slept in last night, and the heavy canvas Polish Lavu shelter for tonight. This A-frame shelter was floorless and made out of heavy canvas, so I laid down a plastic tarp on the floor and pulled my low mahogany table up as a nightstand. Here I set my kerosene Fiora hand lantern to illuminate the inside of this dark shelter. The warm, soft glow of the lantern made for the perfect ambiance of a classic campsite. When darkness arrived, we lit the campfire and sat around telling stories until the stars began to pop out above the tree canopy. Jerry and I walked around trying to find enough open sky to take some star photos, but found that standing in the middle of the road was about the only spot with a clear view of the Big Dipper that was rising from the west. When daybreak came, the ravens were squawking as usual, and the creek roared nearby. It was tough to sleep in, but we all tried. I brewed up some camp coffee and sat back in my camp chair, clutching my cup covered with my old Coleman sleeping bag.
Good morning. I'm making coffee this morning here on the Coleman stove. It's 36 degrees right now. It's only supposed to be in the mid-40s the last 2 nights. Yesterday I got down to 34. Right now it's at 36. So anyway, looks like my coffee is pretty much about done. Nope, that's still going a little bit. I'll give it a couple of minutes to sit here and steep. And then I'll pour it in my cup. And I'll pour the rest in the thermos over there. And later on this morning, we're going to do breakfast burritos. That'll be good.
Since this was our last morning in Wawona, I brought out the griddle one last time and made breakfast burritos. Something about hot eggs and melted cheese with bacon bits just hit the spot. We enjoyed our breakfast before doing a quick job of washing dishes and packing up camp. Since it was still early, we wanted to try and find a somewhat shorter trail we could hit on the way back, but as luck would have it, the trailhead parking lot for Lewis Falls Trail that was right off Highway 41 was jam-packed. We circled around a couple of times, but there were several other cars waiting, so we just decided to head back down the highway toward Fresno. I have to admit we were a little bummed not having the chance for one more hike, but I kept thinking about barbecue ever since our brats last night. Since we had a couple hours to kill on the way home, I had Dave do some research on his phone while I drove. We estimated that we'd hit Bakersfield about 1 p.m., and they've got to have some great barbecue spots in this old oil and cow town. Dave located Salty's Barbecue just a short ways off Highway 99 and said we got to give it a try. It had really good reviews. When we pulled into the parking lot, it looked like it had been a couple of railway cars converted into a takeout restaurant with outdoor seating. There were a lot of big four-wheel drive trucks around and SUVs, so that was a good sign. As I parked, I noticed the painting on the side of the building, as seen on TV's diners, drive-ins, and dives. We went in and ordered a big lunch and sat outside on the patio with a warm breeze blowing off the wood-fired smoker that made us all drool. When the barbecue came out, it did not disappoint. The final push through LA was painless on a Sunday afternoon, and I arrived home about dinner time, even though I was still full from delicious pulled pork. Too bad I didn't have any leftovers. Well, that'll do it for this edition of the Hiking Journal, our hike up the Chilnualna Falls Trail near Wawona in the Yosemite National Park. This was a great adventure, a little short by our normal standards, but fun nevertheless. I was surprised to squeak in a reservation at the last minute at this popular campground that was actually inside Yosemite National Park. And while we didn't drive into the valley, it was nice exploring this section of the park that we'd never been to before. In the next edition of the Hiking Journal, I take a tough and hot 9-mile solo hike on the southbound Pacific Crest Trail to the summit of Lion Peak. Along the way, I enjoy fabulous views along the Desert Divide and take in some magnificent wildflowers on display before the heat of the day begins to take its toll. All of this will be coming up in the next edition of the Hiking Journal. Oh, and don't forget to click the like and subscribe button to the channel to get the latest updates as I post it. I've also been cleaning out the gear garage and selling some of my gently used gear. With some of the proceeds, I've bought a new base camp tent, and an overlanding shelter, and some great new camp cookware that I'll be putting to the test up in the Laguna Mountains. That'll all be coming up in future editions of the journal. Alrighty, take care, and I'll see you down the trail. Bye-bye.